Amanda, my eldest son's wife, nodded in agreement with the other's words, a gesture that made my heart sink. The realization that they despised me was crushing. What had I done to warrant such disdain? Hadn't I simply been fulfilling my role as a mother and mother-in-law? Where had I gone astray? Why was there so much animosity directed at me? Being told I couldn't attend their wedding felt like a stark indication of how serious the situation was. But I couldn't think of anything I might have done to deserve this. My husband is equally perplexed. It's beyond comprehension. After all the love and effort we've put into raising our children, to be treated this way, the disrespect from our son is unimaginable. I need to make them understand the pain of neglecting a mother. They will face the consequences of their actions. My name is Jenna, and I am a 55-year-old homemaker. We have 2 sons. Our eldest, David, is a successful professional in the city, earning a significant salary as an elite. Our younger son, Michael, is quieter and prefers more delicate tasks, so he works at a local manufacturing factory. Although the boys used to get along well in their younger years, their relationship changed drastically as they grew older. David began to harbor a deep-seated resentment toward Michael, belittling him in front of us and even bullying him at school. Despite our repeated efforts to correct David's behavior, his attitude toward Michael remained unchanged. Now, with David's upcoming marriage, we received a message from him that his fiancée, Amanda, who works at the same company as he does, wanted to meet us. David had arranged a dinner for us to get acquainted with her. This news brought us some relief as we saw it as a chance to finally see our son off properly. Although David insisted that Michael should not attend, Michael himself was indifferent, saying, "It's easier for me that way." So my husband and I decided to get him a souvenir on our way back. When the day of the dinner arrived, we were led to an upscale restaurant where a private room had been reserved. As we entered the room, we found David and Amanda already seated, with Amanda exuding a strong presence. "You're late, Mom and Dad," David remarked. "Sorry, dear. We got a bit lost in this unfamiliar area," I said, trying to smooth over the situation. "Don't embarrass me too much," David replied, his tone sharp. Though his harsh words stung, I tried to brush them off, knowing this was typical of him. We settled into our seats and began to enjoy a truly extravagant meal, all the while overhearing the conversation between David and Amanda. Amanda, always attentive, seemed to anticipate every detail of her future plans. David couldn't stop singing her praises. "Amanda is remarkable," he said. "She's so organized and driven. If someone like her had been by my side earlier, I could have accomplished so much more. Amanda is a perfectionist, far superior to anyone else." Amanda, sitting next to him, looked pleased and interjected with a smile, "David, you're exaggerating." David seemed utterly infatuated with Amanda, his admiration for her and himself overflowing. "I'd love to hear more about how you two met and what brought you together," I suggested, hoping for some insight, but David dismissed my request curtly. "Instead of focusing on a boring story, I'd rather you appreciate Amanda's qualities." The entire dinner felt more like a sales pitch for Amanda than a genuine meeting, which made us uncomfortable. My husband also appeared uneasy, and I was relieved we hadn't brought Michael along. David continued, "I've mentioned this before, but Amanda is on a whole different level from you. Make sure you treat her well once we're married." "We would never dream of mistreating anyone," we replied. "You say that now," David retorted, "but you always favored Michael and barely acknowledged me. I can't trust that you will do the same with Amanda." David's words left us stunned. Despite his accusations, our focus on Michael had stemmed from David's relentless bullying. Michael had struggled with David's harassment since childhood, and as parents, it was only natural for us to try to ease Michael's distress. Even when we confronted David about his behavior, he merely shrugged and said, I just don't like Michael, never addressing the real issue. To label our support for Michael as favoritism was profoundly unfair. Not wanting to escalate the situation further, we refrained from responding to David's harsh words. The meeting concluded uneasily with no resolution to our concerns. David, taking matters into his own hands, declared, "You're getting older, so we'll take care of you. Don't worry about it." He had decided that they would move in with us after the marriage without consulting us first. Amanda seemed to echo David's sentiments provocatively, saying, "You have a son who hasn't become independent yet. I guess it's up to me to set him straight." Instead of feeling reassured, her comment made me uneasy. Michael lives with us but contributes actively. He is not merely dependent on us. Nevertheless, David and Amanda moved in as if they were the rightful owners, claiming rooms and acting like they ruled the house. One day, David ordered, "Michael, go weed the garden now. It's a task suited for someone like you." Michael replied, "Sorry, but I have work." David insisted, "You have the day off. You handle it yourself." Michael's face flushed with anger. "What did you say? That's incredibly disrespectful." David's harassment of Michael grew more relentless, and though I found Michael's composed responses amusing, the situation was far more troubling than it appeared. It became clear one night, as everyone else was asleep, that David and Amanda were scheming to drive Michael and us out of our own home. I had gone to the kitchen for some water when I noticed the living room light was still on. I quietly approached and overheard David and Amanda's conversation. "When will this house finally be ours?" Amanda asked. "Just a little longer. We need to ensure those nuisances don't come back once we get rid of them. I want to renovate. This place is really outdated." David laughed in agreement with Amanda, saying, "Exactly." I was stunned by their apparent plotting. I quickly consulted with my husband and Michael, realizing we needed to act fast to prevent the situation from worsening. In the midst of our panic, Michael spoke up, "Mom, let me handle this. I have a solid plan." David's confidence was reassuring, though his plan required some patience. If everything went according to the strategy, we could teach David and Amanda a lesson and reclaim our home. We decided to trust Michael's plan and move forward with it. Despite the ongoing issues, life continued, and David's wedding date was set. They chose a charming venue nearby. Although I had initially considered a countryside location, the venue they selected was lovely. "It's a bit pricey, but we can easily manage," David said with a chuckle, which irritated me, but I chose to remain silent. David and Amanda's antagonism toward Michael persisted, but Michael's mature handling of the situation kept it from being too distressing. As the wedding date approached, we were summoned by David and Amanda. Curious about the reason, my husband, Michael, and I went to meet them, only to be stunned by their announcement. "We don't want you to attend our wedding. If you do, we'll cut ties," they declared. I was taken aback, but I tried to stay composed and asked David, "Are you serious? Why are you telling us this now?" Amanda responded, her eyes filling with tears, "I'm just terrified of you all. I can't bear the thought of having such people at my wedding," which only intensified my discomfort. David added, "As I said, if you don't like it, we'll cut ties." That would be a problem, wouldn't it? After all, I'm the pride and joy of this family, unlike that worthless brother. Just as he shot a glance towards Michael, Michael seemed at a loss for words. Witnessing this, I finally reached my breaking point. "David, that's enough. You've always looked down on Michael," I said, my patience wearing thin. "Why do you treat him this way? He's your brother. Stop mistreating him," I demanded. David and Amanda's hostility quickly shifted toward me. "You're just as bad," Amanda snapped. "You get deceived by his meek demeanor and spoil him. This is sibling favoritism. It's always been terrible living here." "That's because you've constantly bullied Michael," I retorted. That's just an excuse, David said. You simply couldn't resist favoring Michael, could you? No matter how many times I said no, David refused to listen, and we couldn't have a rational conversation. Why wouldn't he hear me out, especially when all of this stems from his own actions? Why can't he reflect on his behavior? Despite everything, David is still my son, and I always thought I had to support him properly. But now I've reached my limit. In that moment, I decided to let go. Fine, we won't attend your wedding, I declared, indifferent to the consequences. Michael and my husband were taken aback by my response, but David and Amanda seemed quite pleased. Are you sure about this? You might end up regretting it, David asked, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Regret? There's no way a wedding would be perfect with nuisances like you there, I said, a hint of finality in my tone. David and Amanda laughed, but we felt a sense of relief. There was no need to attend their wedding and subject ourselves to further unpleasantness. In the end, our family decided to skip the wedding. We hadn't even received invitations, so going to the venue would have been pointless. David seemed pleased, but he was unaware of the implications of our decision. Reflecting on Michael's plan made me smile. After David and Amanda's wedding went off without a hitch, they continued to stay in our house as initially planned. Their workplace was moving closer, making them busier than ever. Once their job transfers were complete and they had their first day at work, they returned home in a state of panic and called for Michael. Michael, what's going on here? They demanded, confronting him for answers. When I asked what happened, they recounted the story briefly. On their first day at work, while being shown around, they unexpectedly encountered Michael, who was their guide. A senior manager named Tyler noticed Michael, greeted him warmly, and informed them that Michael was the president of a major client company. This revelation stunned them, as they had initially thought of Michael as just a factory worker. In reality, Michael had been working diligently at the factory since he was hired, earning recognition from President Johnson, who ran the operation. Michael's innovative ideas were crucial to the factory's success, and he quickly gained respect from his colleagues. Thanks to his contributions, the factory's performance improved significantly, making it a preferred partner for many companies. When President Johnson fell ill, Michael took it upon himself to visit him on his days off, demonstrating his deep commitment to both the factory and its people. Impressed by Michael's dedication, President Johnson appointed him as his successor. Despite Michael's initial modesty and reluctance, I couldn't possibly take on this role. President Johnson was resolute. With the backing of his colleagues, Michael took on the role of president. Under his leadership, the factory's performance continued to thrive, and Michael, already popular among the employees, earned even more trust and respect in his new role. The factory grew into a nationally recognized enterprise, and Michael's name became well known even among major companies in the city. Today, Michael was simply visiting the company for a client discussion, nothing more. David and Amanda, taken aback by Michael's elevated position, were clearly displeased with the respect he commanded. There must be some trickery involved. You've always been like that, David muttered. David then erupted at Michael. If you had told us about this, we wouldn't have acted the way we did. Why didn't you say anything? Amanda, overwhelmed, broke down in tears. Their reaction seemed absurd. Michael responded calmly, I achieved this position through my own efforts. It's really that simple. So why are you so upset? Michael's nonchalant demeanor and innocent expression only seemed to enrage David further, who shouted, Don't get cocky. Michael addressed David calmly. More importantly, there's something crucial I need to discuss with you. With some effort, my husband and I managed to calm David and Amanda down and had them sit. Michael went to his room and returned with a set of photos. He spread the photos out on the table. First, take a look at these, Michael said, placing several photos in front of them. The images showed Amanda with a flamboyantly dressed man, clearly evidence of her infidelity. David's reaction was immediate. He began to thrash around, shouting, "This can't be true." Amanda, visibly shaken, began to tremble as she faced the evidence. "Since she was to become my sister-in-law, I had thought it wise to do a background check, and this is what it revealed." With such clear proof, there was no denying the truth, Michael explained. Confronted by the evidence, Amanda had no choice but to apologize immediately. "I'm sorry," she said. David, in shock, could barely process what was happening. "This is what happens when you don't look beyond the surface." "Nobody's perfect," Michael remarked, his smirk causing us to stifle a chuckle. Overwhelmed by despair, David sank to his knees while Amanda's insincere apologies echoed through the room. Eventually, David and Amanda divorced, an outcome that seemed inevitable given David's unforgiving nature. After the affair, Amanda was anxious about the alimony demands, but her parents covered her financial obligations. Despite this, David's emotional wounds remained unhealed. The shock of the divorce led him to leave his job, and since then, he has isolated himself in his room, emerging only to eat and barely interacting with anyone. Whenever Michael was around, David would react with a fearful glance and quickly retreat. It seemed that the incident had left David with a deep-seated fear of Michael. The family held several discussions about how to handle David's situation. In the end, it was agreed that we would sever ties with him. While this decision would undoubtedly impact David deeply, our patience had worn thin, and we found it hard to forgive his selfishness after everything that had happened. A few months later, David was forced to leave the house. Despite his desperate pleas and tears begging for forgiveness, we could no longer consider him part of the family. His response, though heart-wrenching, felt justified given the circumstances. Meanwhile, the three of us are enjoying a more peaceful life without any disturbances. Even though my husband is retired, we live comfortably thanks to Michael's continued support. We are deeply grateful for our thoughtful and devoted son, Michael. Moving forward, we are committed to being a loving family for him for as long as we can. It looks like Michael is set to marry soon. His partner is a colleague from the same company, with whom he has been in a relationship for several years. We are eagerly looking forward to our beloved son's wedding